Okay, let's go. I should warn you, you're not going to get many standard answers. This is my subtitle. And look at the force that icons can have economically, if well designed. But I want to start by making the point that certainly in the UK, what is unusual is not limited to high rise. There's a sort of extraordinarily ebullient architectural movement going on at the moment, and just everything is being designed excitingly and well. This is the media centre where cricket commentators watch that games only slightly less tedious than baseball. The Corporation Street Bridge, designed to after an IRA bomb blew up the middle of Manchester, and in part at least designed to restore people's spirits. A quite extraordinary lifting bridge, like an eyebrow, up in Newcastle, and behind it, Foster's new concert hall and stage on the other side of the river at Gateshead. Foreign Office Architects concept for the 2012 Olympic Stadium. Red Cool House recently at the Serpentine Gallery with a pavilion for the summer with this extraordinary balloon above it, engineered by Cecil Bowman. Future Systems building for Selfridges in Birmingham, which has absolutely become an icon for that city, and I'll return to it. And even office buildings for government are round, although this is for the Health and Safety Executive, so I suspect it doesn't have any nasty sharp corners in it. Frank Gehry is doing a housing scheme in Hove, and Herzog and de Meuron have just released their design for the second phase of Tate Modern. So on the whole, architecture's gone to our head in the UK. Never use a straight line if a curve will do. If you have to have an angle, why use 90 degrees when there are 359 equally good ones? So you have to wonder, in an expression which Jamie von Klemperer used yesterday, whether we haven't got just a little bit over-exuberant, and certainly some people have. This is Will Alsop's design for a master plan for a town in the north that I think looks a bit like a bag of boiled sweet spicer, and slightly losing the plot. So that's come together with other things in the design of office towers. There is an enthusiasm for good architecture. There is quite an extraordinary boom in property, and it's a long, long run. Really, since 93, 94, it's been up and up and up in the UK, and quite sensational figures. You'll see just in the last 12 months, in London alone, 14 million square feet of offices built and let, and availability is now less than a year's supply. So now we all start building towers. We'll be oversupplied in 3 years' time, and the recession starts again. But in the meantime, extraordinarily powerful economic forces at work. And of course, people like high-rise. I think it's our genetic material that we like to get up and rise. So there's an enthusiasm, certainly amongst those who can choose, and not amongst the economically disadvantaged, for reasons I might return to get high. And so suddenly in London, an extraordinary number of high-rise buildings, and the significance of this is the colour in this hardly has, is that 2/3 of those tall buildings are either under construction or still to be or coming off the drawing boards now, and it's 1/3 completed. So a sudden boom in high-rise. I won't get carried away by comparison with the world. The heights are not that spectacular, but for London, the city that it is, it's really quite an extraordinary change of mood, and it sort of started with this, really, which Peter Rees spoke about earlier on. This has changed all of the rules. And it's known, as Peter said, as the gherkin. Here's Peter about to give it a squeeze. He called his talk squeezing the gherkin. How I squeeze the gherkin, I should know well enough to know that he would never use the expression once in his talk, but that's why that image is in my presentation. But to me, it's more like a great sort of whale coming out front of the surface and appearing over the roofs of London, and its impact has been almost great. A quite extraordinary, popular building. There are some detractors, of course, but it is a popular building. You can see it, and you just say them all over the place. So it doesn't meet English Heritage requirements, which is that you can build a tall building as long as you can't see it. But for the rest of us, it will do just fine. And has changed the skyline forever, and encourage others to follow. And also, I'll go through these very quickly, because Peter mentioned them too. And I should say, so the Swiss Re is not one of my projects. All the rest that we're going to show are Davis Langdon jobs, but that one wasn't done by Goldman Field. But here, Richard Rogers building, known as Peter said, as the cheese grater. Peter didn't mention this because it's not in his bailiwick, but Renzo Piano's London Bridge Tower, known as the Shard. KPF's Bishopsgate Tower, known as the Helter Skelter, and again you heard Jamie yesterday give a very eloquent reason for why it's the shape that it is. some of which I'm sure he thought of before he made this rather beautiful design. Fenchurch Street is the walkie-talkie. If you know your survival instincts, you don't give a job by George Bronson a nickname. Not a good move. And I guess the rest of these buildings that don't have nicknames should be slightly upset. As Peter said, it's a sort of measure of affection, and it's a very British thing to belittle bigness in this way by giving things small names. But nonetheless, a huge, huge volume of buildings, most of these currently on site or just about to be. And then back to nicknames again out of Peter's Bailiwick, across the river in Canary, down the river. So I believe Peter when he says that there are reasons for these buildings being the shapes they are, and I think for the most part they are, but clearly there's a danger, because there are only so many standard shapes until you start going into the totally irregular. This is Jean Nouvel's Torre Agbar in Barcelona, which looks very similar from the outside, very, very different under the skin. A building plan for Japan and so on. So there's a danger, I guess, that the people fearing that they're settling into a shape that's been done before. Again, on the left, Renzo Piano's Shard, and on the right, Foster's Tower for Moscow, which the shoemaker found quite hard not to be rude about yesterday. And going back in history, again, the shapes that would have been done before, and the architectural correspondent of the Times came up with this quote last week. Not quite the elegance of Ada Louise Huxtable, but you sort of get the point. That shape making is starting to run its distance. And wherever you look, it seems to me, that historic reference shows that something might have been done before. A Frank Lloyd Wright sketch from the early 1920s, and a building you've heard about this afternoon. So suddenly there are echoes going, and there's a danger, therefore, of how you make yourself different. Now, however tall you build, someone wants to get taller, so that's not the answer. But there's a strife now for differentiation. How do you make your building different? And I just feel that this is becoming in danger of being the driving force in building shape, not program, which would be one of the points I go on to. So a nice quote from Raphael Vignoli about architects embarking on a frantic quest for exaggerated visual notoriety. So thank heavens that Raphael himself not subject to the same problem. What's going on, of course, in London at least is a powerful economic force of work, is the principle of clusters. You know of Hewlett-Packard's famous garage, which became the whole reason for Palo Alto being what it is and where it is. Clusters are real things. And this kind of level of cooperation leads to trust, and trust leads to lower transaction costs. So in London, we do have this extraordinary financial cluster right in the middle of the city, and clusters are a good thing. It's a bit weird, I guess, that people dealing in the most virtual commodity in the world, money, feel the need to be near each other, but I guess they like to check each other's bonuses. So we have this cluster of high-rise buildings right in the middle of the city, and the challenge for Peter and his lot, of course, is to stop the cluster turning into a zoo of weird buildings that don't have a logic in context. And also to prevent the city being squeezed. Which is going well. And it's one of the things that high-rise is doing, of course, and you saw again from Peter how the creation of open space, both at the base of buildings and indeed within them, as I'll show you in a minute, is overcoming the problem that the city had of not losing its grain, its great big ground scraper buildings. So there's a danger still that we may get over-exuberant. Make architect, very talented Ken Shuttleworth, has a building which he'd like to see in London. I don't think he will. One that's more likely maybe to go into Abu Dhabi. Something that always reminds me of a football trophy, really. But a nice design. And let's see it that way, because God knows they need some help out there. This is the new Grosvenor House Hotel in the Gulf, which I'm pretty sure is a Lego version of these places. And we can only hope it goes the same way. So not every prospect is serious. This was entirely a concept for the World Trade Center, and I think it was not intended to be constructed, and I certainly wouldn't accept it. But this was a serious proposal, again by foreign office architects, good friends, and a very talented young couple of architects who are going to be, I think, absolutely world famous. But to me, that looks like a pile of money. And so you sort of wonder really at what point the money starts to collapse. I'll start illustrating that by saying given all these quite spectacular landscapes made by high-rise buildings, what the hell happened in Ostende? I could pick on many other cities or countries, but the only thing that the European countries agree about is picking on Belgium, so I'm going to do that too. And you wonder how this happened, and the answer is economics. Economics or brown envelope of the planet. And I'm going to give you a very quick 101 in development economics, because you're going to be shocked how easy this is. It's as easy as this. Value less cost, just the profit you want is what you can pay for the land. And here's an example of how, if you can get a permission for a bigger building, you suddenly make profit. Here's a building, 150,000 square feet. 78% of that's rented. And about, in the city of London, about £55 at the moment. You want a 5% yield. Putting that another way, it means you'll wait 20 years for your money. To work out the value of a building, you multiply the area by the net efficiency, by the rent, by the number of years you'll wait for your money back, and that's it. People who go to university for 3 years and pass out and become realtors do that. And a few who fail and become developers, and thank God for them, they get a job. But that is as easy as it is working out the value of a project. Knock off the cost, don't need to linger on it. Typical profit and risk margin is 20%. You can pay 69.9 million for that land. You swap that round, the residual, the profit and risk becomes the bottom line. I've made a mistake in this, but nonetheless, the principle is the same. If you suddenly got permission to build a building twice as big, the value would go up to 229 million. Knock off the costs again, and your profit goes up to 47%. A bit less than that, I should increase the land. Nonetheless, a huge windfall. It only happens once, but that's what happened at Swiss Re. It's probably what happened in Ostende. But you leverage site value, and underlying this is, if you can get a good design and a good architect and get a bigger building, you make more money. It's money in the bank. And this simple equation underlies everything that happens in property development. It is oversimplified. This isn't true, but it's close to the truth, really. This is what office buildings are. They are financial instruments. They're built equations, not pieces of art. It shows the power of money, and San Francisco, Chicago is a great place to look at this. After the Great Fire, development here was controlled by story height and the plot size. And so block after block after block that looks like this appeared. Then the city fathers thought it was getting a bit dull. Let's give the developers permission to build a bit more above the top. And see if they make some more interesting architecture. And the developer said, thanks for the free office building. I'll build it on top as another slab. But developers know where they're getting. They will not be deflected from their simple business of making money. They go through it or around it, but they'll get to making money. That's their business. And most of us make our living out of it, so God bless them. But there are real challenges in towers against that approach, and these are the big ones. The cost and the value drivers are quite different. The time it takes to do them, the size of market demand, the fact that they're hard to phase, and the capacity in the investment market. Not everybody can afford to put their funds into a single lot, the kind of size that we're talking about. Let's do costs first, quickly. And I just put this in to remind you that the role of the cost consultant is ordained in the Bible. So you should all point one quickly. Sensible thing there. And here's the truth. Not profound and not surprising. Towers possible. So a quick look why. Shape and geometry, the structural solution, lifts and escalators, the top and bottom of the building, on costs and building use. I'm not going to linger on these. I'm going to go quite far. But the first thing is the efficiency and closure of the building. The more external wall you have to enclose a given area, the more money you will spend. And this is a big driver. And of course that gets compounded when the shape of the building is complex as well. So when I hear somebody say, by making a weird shape, I save some steel for building load, I can't help thinking what the bill on the other side of that equation is for enclosure. Shape and geometry, the wall-to-floor ratio becomes less efficient. It's a profound cost factor in a world where 20 to 25% of the cost is in the external water load pattern. The shape and size, obviously, of the floor plate makes a big difference. Bigger towers are more economic. So I'll let you have these figures if you care. Structural solutions and the impact of what you've been hearing about the last two presentations and over the last couple of days of the steps you go through, different support systems as wind load and potentially seismic becomes more of a factor, you go up. And these are typical, in our experience, kind of weights of steel for overcoming the various jobs that the steel has to do. And I'd like more of this information, and I'm going to come back to that too at the end. But weight's not everything. It is a sophisticated business, pricing influence, and you just can't do it by measuring up the kilogram. All of these costs, some of them are more important than material weight. You have to look at fabrication complexity and how the building is made to get the answer right. You have to look at method. Again, simply can't weight it up. You have to know exactly how the building will be made. You need early constructor advice. Temporary work's often a big factor. All of these things together. I'll skip this, but obviously the connections and the way that the building meets the ground, the way the elements in the building meet, how you introduce fire protection, big factors. Specification of the facade I've already touched on. Structure is about 25%. Facade typically at 20%. These are the two big variables you're playing with in cost of the tower. And of course it all goes a bit wrong, and the building goes wonky when it starts to twist or taper or tilt. The potential for, we're going to talk to Simon about a building where the facade costs under 40%. That's not free or fun. So it's worth looking before you start playing so much with the shape, but whether something expressive can be done just with the facade itself, a neglected art, I think. But there are ways of introducing real drama into the facade without playing around with the shape of the building. And can indeed, of course, become the signature instantly recognised. So for economy in facades, a repetition is good, sorry about that. Fat's good, fat buildings are good, but also ugly. And so how do we fight against that and get some quality back? These are what was called soldier stacks yesterday. These are in Hong Kong, they could be in Korea. This is where the economically disadvantaged, their experience of high. I won't pause and list escalators, it's not a surprise to you to know that's a significant cost. And increasingly, the top and bottom of the building become costly items as town planning requirements and so on start to introduce requirements for overhanging public areas and the like. So typically, shown core for a 150 mistake should be 180. For a low-rise building, sorry, these are pounds. You used to be able to change them just by changing the pound sign to a dollar. You can't do that anymore because your dollar's not getting any stronger, as you may know. Multiplied by about 1.3. And then all the other costs, and I'll do this a little bit quickly. The logistics of getting people up and down the building every day and avoiding trying to have to do it too often. Serious implications of health and safety, keeping your people safe on the building. All of these things rack up. So there's a typical kind of build-ups, which we like to use, and it's a massive oversimplification, but you create a model very early on and say, okay, if you play with structure, what does that do to the facade? And so on, to work out in proportion how the cost of the tower is moving, and how you can balance complexity in one place with some simplicity you hope in the other. Next bad news is towers are less efficient. You get less rentable area around them because of the impact of cores, which increase in take up the space, of course, as height goes up. They take longer to build than they do in the UK, typically 10 months longer to put 1 million feet in London for a groundscaper rather than a tower. And phasing is supposed to be impossible. And this is a huge, huge issue. The developer, however long he spends doing it, eventually, it's a bit like learning to ski jump. You have to go for it and build it. And this is one place, of course, where irregular shapes do help. London Bridge Tower, the Shard, is overcoming this problem by going mixed use. So it only needs a certain number of office tenants, not too many to get going. It's already got a contract for the hotel, it's selling the residences. And therefore, this changing floor plate is the product of the programme and is the product of overcoming economic difficulty in building a tower. So they're more expensive, they're less efficient, and they take longer. They're a bad idea, I guess. And how can you overcome that as a problem? Well, you could lie. That sometimes works. I love this quote from the Pope, when he forgave his architect for massive over-expenditure on a cathedral because he liked the cathedral. This is a bad business plan. For those of you that are contemplating. The fact is, good stuff costs more than fancy. And when occasionally people say to me, can't you do good design for the same price as bad? The answer is no. And I can take any design you produce, and using my skills as a cost consultant, I can make it cheaper and nastier. Therefore, the opposite is true. Making buildings better costs money. And the arts and real arts, therefore, lies in a new and much richer understanding of what value is and what it's about. We tend to over-concentrate, particularly because of cost consultancy, on exchange value, whether you can sell a thing for more than it costs you to build. But value is a very rich concept and has lots of levels, and I'd like to talk about a few of them. Let's just look at exchange value and how architecture helps with this. Good architecture, right here in Chicago, probably the best longitudinal study of design and rental return, says you can get a 164 to 185 premium for buildings that are good enough to get in the wall. That's about 16 to 18% on the rent. Not sure I quite believe it, but if it's true, it justifies something like a 30% increase in building. That's true. So that's pretty good stuff. And although it's been difficult to rent out Swiss Re for reasons I might come on to in a minute, that too is on the market now at 4.5% yield. A staggering investment. About 600 million for that building. I'd like to go and buy it if you can. Another argument, Commerzbank by Foster. And this is one where I can give you a solid figure. We costed two schemes here, an absolutely standard solution for the bank to give it the space it needed, with a centre core, a rational plan, deep as it could be on the site and still be usable. And then we costed this design, and it was 25% more than we told the bank. The payback was 25% of the year the building runs without cooling, and because it's green and the likes it being green, they let the bank put 25% more space on the site. They didn't have to buy another building or another site to bring the whole operation together. There's more than one way of generating value by imaginative design. These two buildings, I've already referred to, the Shah and the Heron Tower, these got planning on appeal only because of their design. The architect putting money in the bank with the client. Otherwise they simply wouldn't be there, or they'd be much smaller. Contingent value I'll do very quickly. For the most part it refers to things like the economic impact of the Bilbao Gallery on that city. As we've heard a lot over the last couple of days about places, whole places like Songdo, having their value created or enhanced by iconic buildings. So contingent value, if you're developing on a big enough scale, is a relevant thing too. Brand value and civic value operate together at the public level. Giving the City of London the buildings it needs, reducing pollution, avoiding urban sprawl, whether it's your kind or our kind. These are real civic contributions. And branding a place, so it's recognisable by its profile alone. The cities like this, and all around the world again. But the real value of the building is not in its development, it's in its use. And I'd like to talk about that. A business gets value from a building in three ways: by efficiency, getting the most from its money; by effectiveness, getting the most from its people; and by expression, getting the most from its brand. And in some ways, all of these things are assisted by good design. As far as towers are concerned, the news is not good. It costs more to run a tall building than a groundscape or a low building. It's an awful lot to clean. It's expensive to clean, it's expensive energy, security, and so on. So the annual running cost is high. Typically, a business that owns a building for 25 years, its investment in that building, about 41% is building it and the rest is running. So you should be more interested in running costs than in building. Next, you need to see how many people you can get into the building, and the towers, particularly towers with complex plans, don't help this either. Then you need to look at whether you can actually stack your people to get more in one desk than another, and of course whether everybody doesn't have a desk. Hot desking, so called. And there's a sort of logical end to that too, I think. Effectiveness, getting the most of your people, is where the real thing is. If you look at that equation again, say 60% in running, that assumes it's an empty building. The buildings aren't meant to be empty, they're definitely equal. Look at the occasion again with the salaries of the occupants. 86% is those people's salaries. Everything else is irrelevant. Putting this another way, if you can reduce the cost of a building by the effectiveness of your people by about 7%, the building's free. This is what should drive them. Operational value and how a building works with the business inside. And in the UK at least, this is not the end. This is not the way to treat the most valuable asset. And it doesn't meet either of the requirements of office space. It has a logical conclusion which most of you will find distressing, except facilities managers who find the waste of space on the right-hand corner rather distressing. For the rest of this is not human at all. People think buildings are important. 94% think that the way that they're valued by their business is indicated by the space that they're in. And yet, 33% of the UK measure, too ashamed to take people back to their building, and 32% positively depressed when they got to work. Now, multiply that by your salary bill, the impact of that on your salary bill, and really good buildings suddenly become a huge economic driver. It is absolutely the most valuable asset and the most difficult to manage, and it's not responsive to quick fixes. So good buildings are thought as important by staff. And we know what works for people. They need to be comfortable, high-rises, and all that. They like to be externally aware, and nothing better than the views from a great tower. And this is the top of the Vignoli Tower, by the way, where planners, in the good person of Peter Roos, insisted on public space on top of this building. But fabulous views right out of the system. What we don't know enough about is how workspace works, how the actual floor plate works. We know that big open plans work well for most, but there's some big decisions you need to make in the way that your building works. You're planning. And these are the biggest. Hierarchy or democracy in the way you want to run your business. This starts to dictate the kind of space. And secondly, is interaction or privacy the most important commodity? The whole value of jokes and gossip and ideas in a business means you need interaction. And towers are not ideally suited. You need third places, so-called, to work. This is backstage space clients headquarters in London, where they spend all their time in the atrium working around tables, and nobody go back there. Good communication spaces, interaction spaces, places where people encounter. And if you look at the way towers are developing, and the floor plates that towers are developing, you have to wonder how good they are for this kind of business. It's not a bad one, big square. This is Vignoli's tower, which is pretty conventional with the corners knocked off. This is the Great Portland Estates building in Bishopsgate. This is KPS building, the Heron Tower. I think this is a cracker, actually. This is like a high-rise ground scraper, although it's such a thing. That atrium is filled in every 3 floors near little villages. And I think this is a really good solution to a high-rise.
We'll give 5 minutes, Paul.
I will then shoot very far. It's 10 years. The show-up plan. This is interesting because it looks the same, but a completely different plan generated by a business league on the Russian thing. Lion Street and so on. So all of these plans, you wonder how well they suit interaction. Thomas Bank better because of its base. This one isn't going to work for a business that needs big open plan. This is default also quite big. And Swiss Re gave some problems that it started to try to meet by cutting away on the floor plan, but didn't overcome it all. There are 2 basic tenant models. Big tenants, for the most part, are not going to be suited to this kind of central core narrow space. But small tenants are. And a good example of that is the NatWest Tower, which has got record rents on small floor plates because they have high perimeters and works. It breaks all the rules. And this also says something about branding, by the way, because it's a building which, although NatWest disagrees, it's thought to be in the shape of their logo. You can make your own mind. I'll shoot through expression very quickly. This is just about getting the most from your brand. And Swiss Re has done it, as Peter said this morning, it has actually made a whole new experience arriving at these buildings. I'm going to finish, you'll be glad to hear, Chairman, on some plea to the Council, which is about data. I've heard so many people ask from the floor in the last couple of days, what was the premium for that, and how much heavier was that? And we don't quite get the answer. And I think there's a problem, and it's not going to go away if this is the working groups that the Council is going to go on. Progressive collapse, fire and life safety, seismic design, sustainable design. The news is that these buildings are not instruments of engineering. Engineering is the instrument. They are instruments of commerce. So my question to the Council is, where's the money in all of this? Because there's a serious problem with the lack of real data about which to make informed design decisions. So nobody's better equipped than this Council to get it together. and start to share information, which I call the Tour de France principle. You know, let's get the speed up together. Let's get the quality of what we do up together. And then if you want to be fastest, or richest, or best, or tallest, or whatever, I'll take my chances with you in the sprint finish. But let's get the pack going fast first. Thank you.